One sec. Okay, I think we are live now. So the motion we are doing. Ah, shit, the motion's not on. One sec, I have to find the motion.
First say hi also. Don't you have to say
Hello,
like
hi,
hi?
hello. Do you want to just start introducing? Like,
Yeah, hi, I'm Aina and this is Sriram.
uh,
We used to debate together a while ago.
yeah, a while ago. Um, wait, bro. Yeah, okay. I think the motion is on chat. I can read it out from here now. Hi, I am Sriram and this is I know we used to debate a while ago, as was just said. Okay, so the motion that we're doing is this house opposes the EU's recent antitrust crackdown on big tech giants. There's a long info slide, which I'm sure will be pasted in the description when this video is uploaded. We're prepping for Gov. I mean OG, I think, because it's a BP video. So yeah, we'll start 15.
Yeah, I'm starting a timer
Yep.
in three, two, one.
Hmm.
Do you wanna divide? I can do burdens and you can focus on characterization for this debate.
Yes. So 1.5
Sounds
minutes. We
good.
will.
See
Yeah.
you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, I
Okay,
think we're
start.
done
Let's
with
start.
1.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to start?
Yeah, I can go. I think three large things this debate is about. One is about the economic harm that's brought to these US big tech companies when you have a crackdown. The second is, and sort of as an outcome of that argument, the second argument is about consumer welfare, and what choices consumers in the EU have. I think potentially there's also an argument to be made about big tech deprioritizing EU markets now in face of this crackdown and what that means for EU consumers. And I
Hmm.
think the third thing that happens is, the third argument we make is what happens in absence of US big tech companies and how Chinese big tech companies are likely to fill that vacuum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what this debate is about. What do you think?
Yeah, makes sense. Though one thing I would say, I think the economic harm stuff that you said probably goes as a reason for why consumer welfare is harmed.
Yeah,
So the
I think
probably
it's a premise. The all
yeah,
our
it's a
arguments
premise
are
to a
based
lot
on.
of the
Yeah,
arguments. Yeah, fair enough.
yeah,
So I think in terms of characterization, two broad things to keep in mind. First is I think we broadly want to characterize that EU already is has a very stringent regulatory environment. So much so that if I'm not wrong, Europe has the lowest number of Fortune 500 companies. So they've consistently stifled scale across industries and specifically in big tech. I think the thing we want to characterize is US and like most other markets are trending towards more deregulation.
mm,
We don't have to take a stance on whether that's good or bad, but we just have to put it out there as a fact. And China is pretty much a black box. We don't know what's happening there, but it seems that they're at least aggressively state subsidizing the tech companies, right? So we want to
yeah,
really frame that EU is already stringent, it goes above and beyond. But second is, I think
yeah,
this motion is specific to the recent crackdown that's happening. So the words in the info
yeah,
slide, which is self-preferencing and interoperability, I think those are the things we take a stand against. I think we're
yeah,
okay with like data privacy regulations, and I think we should sort of burden push up on this, which is we have GDPR and other sorts of good things on both
yeah,
sides of the house. It is exclusively their
yeah,
burden to justify why interoperability and all this other things that the info slide says
yeah.
need to be there.
Yeah, yeah. So to be clear, self-preferencing means that when you buy an Apple phone, it comes with an Apple OS, and
Yeah.
interoperability means you don't operate across operating systems. You just have one. Correct?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
is
yeah.
there anything I'm missing? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. But
Awesome.
I think, can we like take 30 seconds to just like visualize what this looks like? So if I
Yeah.
buy an iPhone right now, so do I get to pick between, let's say, the App Store and the Play Store? I mean, the same
I
way.
think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think this is exactly where I think this our matter file tells us what this is. It's
Hmm.
basically just a potential system is like a browser ballot, which is when you're buying a phone, you get a bunch of different browsers and you're able to
Hmm.
pick which browser as opposed to a preloaded browser.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
basically, the burden is now on the consumers to decide which browser is best for them, which
Hmm.
means that some of these consumers may not have the most information to make a fair choice to begin with. So we
Hmm.
start there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I
Yeah.
mean, do I, so I'm just trying to understand, like, do I have to pay for this other, like this feature, which is
I
I
think
want,
potentially, I think that's
yeah.
yeah, I think that's a gov argument, right? That when you separate all of
But
these
these browsers
different
are free, no?
systems
Like I can technically choose between Google Chrome, Firefox, Brave, or any of these browsers for free. So
right
are you
now,
sure about the cost claim?
I don't know. Let's talk through this
Okay.
debate and
All
we'll
right.
see where we land at. Yeah,
Okay, fine. Helps. Okay, we're at five something. So argument
cool.
split.
I think let's just talk through all arguments together.
Yeah, so
So on
broad path to
economic harm,
victory is we think this is going to be horrible for consumers. And if I have to put it in one line, I think it is going to be inconvenient for consumers. It is going to potentially have some data privacy implications for them, which they don't want. And yeah, those are the two ways in which I think it's very clearly
yeah.
impacting
Quick
consumers.
question. Is ops path to victory in this debate to prove that interoperability between big US big tech giants is good, or is ops path to victory to prove that this crackdown means that smaller companies are able to fill the vacuum?
Yeah,
If
so
I was
I
op,
think
I
the
would choose
most
the second, I
likely is the
think.
first, right? But I
Okay,
think what they'd want to ideally go for is the second because
second,
there's
right?
very low
Yeah.
margin in proving that a bunch of big tech companies are now interoperable. Like, yeah,
Just
sure.
compete
Now
against
what?
each other, exactly. Like it's just redividing the consumer base between a few. So I think let's function on the assumption of op is doing the second.
Yeah, yeah. Or will they? Wait, let me just take 10 seconds to think about it. Uh, or maybe they'll just do the first because, like, how else do you prove? I mean, what other operating systems do you know of other than like an Android and an Apple? I'm sure there are more, and I'm not a tech person, so I don't know them. But
No, I mean, I don't think also this debate is about operating systems. It's
yeah, because
about
it can't be about like
interoperability. Yeah.
obscure programming nerds who are, installing some unknown niche sort of operating system. So it most likely will be competition between other big tech players. So I think we can sort of like in one line just frame out why it can't be about smaller players. Like they can never gain enough market share to compete against big tech.
Yeah,
And
fair
most
enough.
big tech small players are just like they innovate so they can get acquired, right? So it's never them competing against the big guys. So I think we
Yeah.
operate under the assumption that the counterfactual is competition among three, four big tech players for the operating system, for the app store, etc., etc.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but what is ops benefit in proving this?
people
What
keep each
happens?
other
Just
in check.
consumers.
It's just a check and balance system.
But so I would, at least I think the claim we make in this debate is that that's inexclusive. Regardless, even now they're all competing for the exact same consumer base. So it doesn't, like, it's not sitting well with me that op would choose that argumentation. But okay, let's pause. Maybe we move on to our argumentation and we'll figure
Yeah,
it
yeah,
out
we
along the way.
integrate the comparative
Yeah.
now. Fine,
Yeah.
we're at like
Okay, cool.
seven, almost
So
eight.
cool. So first argument, economic harm. I think two or three potential claims we can make here. One is
Hmm.
that this interoperability actively disincentivizes research and development. That's
Hmm.
because why would you invest in a bunch of like making your operating system better,
Hmm.
which you're currently giving to users free of charge? The only reason
Yeah.
you do that is because yeah, it's
Hmm.
on already preloaded. I think the
Hmm.
second is um, because you're not able to preload, there is significantly less data that you're collecting from one single sale, and
Hmm.
therefore your costs. That I think those that data that you collected was offsetting a lot of your costs earlier. Now it no longer
Hmm.
does that, and therefore you have to increase costs to be able to make up that deficit. And then I think
Yeah.
the third argument is I don't know if this is an economic harm. This is an argument we can make, which is
Mm.
basically with interoperability that allows you to get like data security that covers your entire phone. Like when you buy an Apple phone, it covers security that covers your entire phone.
Yeah, yeah.
And that allows for Apple to invest in like one, put a lot of investment to data security versus if you're doing interoperability, I think the
There's a lot more
incentive
variables
goes
involved, is
down.
what I'm gathering.
Yeah,
Like,
the incentive goes
yeah.
down, and I think you can then Apple can just blame like Android for the OS, etc. So it's not a lot of accountability on Apple. Do you know what I mean?
No, I would say maybe we don't frame it from an accountability angle because at the end of the day, you get called out if I have an iPhone. But I think I'd frame it from, you have a completely different set of codes now, which your developers never knew about because those were Android things. And now you have to
Cool,
frame your data
whatever. Yeah,
security from that perspective. So it's just like a lot more
sure,
work to do it.
sure, sure.
And
So I think
then
those are the three mechs for
Okay, so
economic harm. Fair,
on this
right?
though, on this premise, the op claim is simple. These are big tech giants. They have pools of cash lying around, like in reserves, and it impacts all big tech giants similarly, right? So it's not one company
Equally,
that
yeah,
you're targeting. So how
yeah.
exactly is this an economic harm if everyone is getting impacted by it? Uh,
I don't think it's an economic harm on the big tech giants though. The claim I'm pushing here is that it's an economic harm that they will push to consumers now because they don't have
mm,
the incentive to do a lot of this research and development anymore and they're not able to preload their OS onto a phone. Like why would they spend the money doing something for free? Like for example, Google
yeah.
Maps right now is free. Why would you spend the money doing that when it's not preloaded onto a phone?
Yeah, no, that's fair. So, what I'm trying to understand is, so obviously you don't have this problem in the US. If you're selling a phone in India, you don't have this problem, but you only have this problem in
Mm.
Europe. So, what is the
Yeah,
likely reaction of a big tech player there? Is it to offload these
yeah.
costs to the consumer or not? Because the op claim is because you don't have this problem in other geographies, you can technically cross-subsidize Europe. So
But
you're
why
fine
would
with
you?
taking high, huh? Yeah, so we need to do the analysis
I,
for why they wouldn't. Right?
yeah, I
Because
think
the way I
one
would say they would
like
is because Europe is a highly developed market. Everyone has purchasing power, and that matters for a big tech player, right? Everyone there will buy a product of yours, even if the population is not that high as like India or something. They
yeah.
will buy something. So why is it that they will offload these costs?
I think the comparative is if they the comparative is they also need to prove cross subsidization. Like, why do they have enough?
Mm.
Why would they care enough about this market to cross subsidize costs that they're currently incurring because of this regulation? What's more likely is that they would want to leave EU and focus on markets that currently don't have this regulation because they have limited
Yeah.
like financial resources,
Okay, I
even if
think
they're
I
a
think
big
just
tech
give like
firm,
one
right?
reason for this, like
Yeah,
on the first, and
yeah,
then we put a
cool.
pin on this and we develop it in like second speech,
Yeah.
right? So that is a premise of economic harm. Economic harm. So on consumer welfare though, like we're at 12, we're at almost 12. So how do you want to
Hmm.
impact this? Because then we need to go to the other stuff, which is, uh,
I think consumer welfare is just an impacting of money. You pay more money for it. Now you're also
mm,
unclear about your where your data is going because now
mm,
you're buying multiple different like it's interoperable
yeah,
across multiple different tech giants, so you can't keep a track of where you're going,
yeah.
where your data is going. And I think what are other mechs for consumer welfare? Um,
Uh, Okay. No, I think this is fine. I think we can develop
yeah,
this
I think this is
separate.
okay.
I think we should move to the second one, second argument, just in the interest of time. Second argument we're framing how exactly? Is it?
What happens in absence of these US big tech giants?
Yeah. Uh, so the thing is, I think that can become like a part of the
A part of the
first
first
claim,
argument, which is basically
which is
you
that
prove
you
the
end up with
premise that they will
subpar
leave
goods.
the
Like,
EU.
yeah,
Hmm.
I'll have a
Uh,
Huawei phone because Huawei is subsidized aggressively by like China, and
yeah,
they can
yeah,
probably
yeah.
operate in the market, right? I think the second claim has to be about businesses. Generally, why there's it drops the incentive for tech innovation to be happening in the EU. I
Yeah.
think the way to make the claim is smaller companies also do not want the two ways it affects smaller companies, right? One, they also bear the regulatory burden. Complying with
Yeah.
regulation is super expensive, so that stifles innovation generally for smaller companies. But second, if you know that big tech players don't value
I
you
don't
as a
know if we can
market.
make that argument though, because doesn't the debate say this is a crackdown on big US big tech giants? It does. So it doesn't apply. It doesn't cross apply.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay, in that
But
case, maybe we
I
make
think the
the
argument,
argument is
yeah,
in the way that if the EU market is not significant enough for big tech players,
yeah,
they're not
yeah,
acquiring
yeah,
smaller tech
yeah, yeah, yeah.
startups in
That's
the
the yeah,
EU, right?
yeah.
So why would they?
Yeah.
So the okay, yeah, I mean
Yeah,
that's
I
that's
think
a fair
that's
claim. How do you
that's a
build that
solid
out? What do
mech.
you want to build? What do you want to build under it?
Um,
Like anything else?
um, I think
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
one is less money goes into things like AWS, for example,
Mm.
where they're currently like subsidizing and making it cheaper for smaller businesses to use them. They don't have the extra money, surplus money to do that anymore.
Yeah,
Two, they're making less acquiring, they're acquiring less, far lesser in the EU than they would
yeah,
anywhere else. So they're using. Basically, that means that they privilege markets outside of the EU to do a
yeah,
lot of their acquirals.
yeah.
So markets in the EU are unlikely to build. I
And
think
I
those are
think
fine. Like
generally
those
you
are
get
two
locked
solid
out of the
examples.
tech value chain a lot, right? Because it's not like you have
Yeah.
the cheap labor to do assembly of phones and stuff like that. The R&D bit, like people will not do R&D if they're not going to get acquired,
Mm.
and you
Yeah.
generally don't have companies to like in the EU generally, right? So I think the claim is to say tech is a high value supply chain. You get locked out of it
Yeah.
entirely because of this regulation, and that's not good for the EU. So something
Yeah.
along those
And then I
lines.
think also,
Mm,
yeah, I think the only impact that I would draw from that argument is just
mm,
because you get locked out of tech, it means lesser funding, lesser innovation as a whole in general, given that a lot
yeah,
of the world currently is relying on tech. And I think
yeah.
that's
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool.
Cool. Okay.
Awesome.
That was prep time. I don't know. Hope that was useful.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, that
uh,
was also us prepping together, I think, after a couple of years. So
yeah,
it's been a while.
yeah. But I think for the next segment, we'll just briefly chat about Matterfiles and how we went about constructing our Matterfile in about like 15-ish minutes. Ayana,
Yeah.
do you want to begin or should I? You.
No, why don't you start?
Okay, so I think broadly two, three things to cover. The first and the most helpful tip that we followed for building a matter file is we used to pick, let's say, one industry or like one, what is not industry for? No, just one area,
Topic.
yeah,
Yeah.
one topic. And then we used to get a bunch of motions, like 10, 15 motions on that topic. Let's say we're doing tech, right? So we'll have 10, 15 motions on tech. And what we'll do is we will have very short, like mini preps, probably 4 minutes, 5 minutes, not more than that, just for us to have the silent prep and then for us to flesh out the burdens of the motion. And then what we do for the remaining 2, 3 minutes is very, very quickly make note of what are things that we did not know in this motion, which would have helped us in our argumentation had we known the specific piece of information. Right. So, for
Yeah.
example, in this motion, maybe, I don't know, knowing more about what are specific regulations that EU requires tech companies to follow right now would be a note that we'd make after this prep. So, how this helps us is that we're very targeted in reading about the exact things that we don't know about, as opposed to just opening up, like, one of these news websites and reading about it. So, that was one thing that we did. Anna, if you want to take over.
Yeah, I think the second thing that I'll add to that is even when we were looking at more generalized ways of prepping, so for example, we were looking at a bunch of news articles, I think it would be very targeted into what kinds of media we were consuming. So, for example, I think one of the resources we relied on a lot was the New York Times opinion column because it basically tells you two sides of the argument, is lends itself very conducively to debating because you have both a prop case and an op case and you're able to note that stuff down. Yeah, Shriyam, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the mm, resources we use for general knowledge?
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
for things like IR, I really liked foreign policy for the same reason that Ayana just described, which is it has analysis columns, analysis, arguments, and facts. So there are three different types of articles that you get there. And I think the argument columns were actually exactly as you would deliver a speech. So someone would have, here are 5 reasons for why this specific trend is happening in the world, right? And those lend itself very well to your actual speech. So foreign policy was really helpful. Apart from that, I think, as Anna said, I think should not underestimate the value of newsletters because you often don't have the time to read entire articles, right? But if you have a newsletter coming in your mail every day, even for like 2, 3 minutes, you're at least updated on the headlines. So I think that
Yeah.
was helpful.
I
Apart
think
from
the
that,
today's version of what we did is just basically a Substack, having a Substack
yeah,
account
yeah,
and reading a
Substack is
bunch of
actually really
Substack.
good. If you find good
Yeah.
Substacks, people have very good arguments there.
Yeah.
So that was that. And then, yeah, the next thing I'd say
Um,
is, you go.
no, I mean, I think the other thing I was going to add is the sort of way we matterfiled. So I think a couple of things that we did was just basically, so for example, our big tech matterfile is divided into a bunch of different um, subtopics within big tech. So we have one on like antitrust, we have one on China, and so on and so forth. And then we just slot into those. What that also allowed us to do is, and I think this is another thing we did in our matter files, we had a bunch of like arguments we knew we ran a lot. And
Mhm.
so we would literally chart out those arguments. So we knew them so well that when we ever had to run them, either we'd have to refer to the matter file once, or Sriram would say, hey, we have to run this argument, and we wouldn't have to spend time in prep discussing that argument. We would just know because we'd written it out before what we would
Yeah.
end up running. It saved us so much time in prep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That and then I think when you're reading like any article, I mean, first obviously be very selective about what you end up reading. But once you're reading it, I think very useful to ask yourself debate questions as if like imagine you were a CA at a tournament and you were reading this
that's
from the
so.
perspective, yeah, from the perspective of setting a motion, right? So
Yeah.
ask yourself very basic questions like like is this balanced, right? Or why exactly is this happening? An example would be I don't know. For example, I think recently reading about the protests in Hungary, there were protests in Turkey, etc., etc. Right? The protests in Hungary, for that matter, were the largest ever in their history. How exactly did a protest like that spring up in a country that's on the verge of like that's democratically backsliding, right? So, what are the structural reasons that enable that to happen? So, news articles often won't give you the structural reasons per se, but when you look at it from that lens, now that especially with GPT, I think the useful thing is you just mention the facts of this. For example, there was the largest the pride parade in Budapest, and then XYZ happened, and then you turn that into structural reasons which you end up matterfiling then. So always read articles with an
Yeah.
eye for how a CA would think about this, and that really helps in not just absorbing the facts of the case but engineering them into structural reasons that you can matterfile. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that is what I
I
had.
think Mm. No, I mean, I think the only thing that I'll add is I know there are a bunch of Matterfile videos out there that teach you how to Matterfile really well. I think we basically did very similar things to them. I think the only few things that I think we did a little bit differently were we would be very stringent about sort of analyzing our debates, I think. And we have this section, I think, in our Matterfile that said things we were very bad at. So I'm looking at it right now after a really long time, and it says like happiness debates and defending the criminal
Yeah.
justice system. And we would basically spend time realizing that we'd lost three criminal justice debates over the course of whatever, like the last five tournaments we'd been at. And so we would be able to gear our matter filing towards specifically that. So it just gave us a little bit more structure into what we should matter file. And I think the
Yeah.
second thing is we basically took broad topics we get in debating and we divided it between the two of us. So what
Mm.
generally that meant is if Sriram was sort of matter filing in international relations, I generally wouldn't even look at it. I would just be matter filing all of the things that came to me. It may I would take this with a pinch of salt because I think what happened as a consequence of that is it put a lot of burden on the person that was matter filing in debates when we had to debate that to figure out what the case should be. But I think it allows if you have limited time to cover a lot more ground. And so if you're preparing for ABP or any other majors, I think you should just figure out how much time you have left and decide what you want to do together and what you want to do separately.
Yeah, so
So
I mean,
yeah.
I think what Anna said, specialization really helps. At least with the composition of our team, Aina was, you know, like a lazy, what not was is law
Mhm.
student, and it was a law student, but like now is works in
Yeah.
whatever corporate, works with like AI and stuff. So she's always good with big tech or good with law, CJS, that sort of stuff. I was more inclined towards economics. I was fine with IR. Yeah, specialize. But then I think what you can do towards the end is at times just have a conversation with your debate partner that goes, okay,
Yeah.
what do we know about, let's say, China, right? So just have a 30-40 minute talk. Without relying on any written material, this is what I know about China, and then your partner, who's for example not matterfiled that, gets to ask you very commonsensical questions on what you have matterfiled. So that way, you're both sort of learning off of each other, and that sort of helps. But yeah, that's about it. I think the summary of a lot of this is be very targeted, get regular feedback on what you're not good at, and then read up specifically on that. So you error correct more frequently. I think that's all. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay, thank
our
you.
Matterfile. Maybe we can link it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Hope this was helpful and good luck for everyone preparing for ABP.
Bye. Good luck.